The Rust Syndicate is here, showing up in Pokemon Legends CA. They're all over Lumio City, and they're led by a leader that clearly demands respect from his many minions and tough henchmen, and that is Corbeau. I mean, just look at that drip. Of course he demands respect. And look at his office. I want a giant King Gambit statue. But listen, I know exactly what the Rust Syndicate are up to, where they originate from, and what the obsession is with serpents. I've spent over 10 years going through every single Pokemon teaser and trailer that's ever come out, looking for any little breadcrumb to try and make Pokemon theories like this. But there is no Pokemon theory like this, because this is not a theory video, it's a lore video. Because exactly what the Rust Syndicate are all about, well, it's right there in writing. I'm actually so sure of it that by the end of this video, I'm going to ask for your subscription, and I really think I'll have earned it. Let's go. So the Rust Syndicate, let's start with the facts, then the speculation, and then the mind-blowing stuff. So, the facts. The Rust Syndicate. Let's just look at the name. The idea of a syndicate implies some level of criminality, and Pokemon is no stranger to evil teams. Team Rocket, Aqua, Magma, and so on. But over the last few years, we've kind of moved away from the evil team. Yes, there's been Team Skull and Star, and the other apparently very forgettable one. Team Yell. Yeah, there you go. That makes sense. But these are not the evil teams of the region as they once were. And in fact, the whole idea of it even got thrown up in the air with the last Legends game, where the Galaxy Expedition Squad were the good guys, the Misfortune Sisters were minor villains, and the true villain was hidden. I suspect the same will be true here. So the Rust Syndicate, not a traditional evil team. In fact, the word syndicate, while often associated with the mob or the Yakuza, isn't explicitly criminal. The dictionary definition is just simply a group of people whose goals align, who come together and work together. Then we've got the rust element in the name. Okay, well, rust obviously evokes steel, and that makes sense for a city that's built out of metal, with the Prism Tower in the middle, inspired by the Eiffel Tower, of course, built out of metal. But they are the rust, a sort of corrosion, and that's represented by the poison element of the team. Corbeau, our leader, is obviously dripped out in, well, poison toxic drips. The color purple is ever present, of course, being the color of the poison type. On the outside of the base or headquarters, we also see a Weezing statue, not too dissimilar to how in Legends Arceus. Galarian Weezing on the outside of the Galaxy Expedition headquarters. Inside the base, we see this Hisuian Quillfish or Overquill statue of some kind, and of course, we see our boss using Arbok. I also mentioned there's a tie to serpents here because, yeah, on the back wall of the headquarters, we do see Steelix, and I think serpents are really important. In fact, I think they're foundational to the story, and yes, I do mean this as a matter of Pokemon lore, as a matter of Pokemon fact, because this is a story that Pokemon has been telling us for the last few years. Bear with me. But first, there's just some tweets that I think we need to look at that are kind of speculative, but they actually tie into the stuff that is right there in writing. So first of all, we've got this tweet that suggests that in Japanese, Corbeau speaks with the Kansai Ben dialect. This is the dialect associated with the Johto region, and I mean, in the real world, the area that Johto is based off of, Kyoto. We actually see Commander Kamado, again, another tie to the Expedition Squad here, who uses that dialect because he actually is from Johto, or so the speculation goes. But all we need to know here is that the Johtonian dialect has gone around, it's traveled around the Pokemon world, and given all of the kind of Japanese, I guess like aesthetics of the Syndicate, you see the little stone garden in the background, because of all the Japanese aesthetics, we can assume that the Syndicate's origins are somewhere in one of the Japanese Pokemon regions. Could it be Hisui, Sinnoh? Could it be Kanto or Johto? Maybe the Hoenn region, or maybe the latest DLC area of Kitakami? Well, it's interesting because there is this other tweet, and you can see very clearly, yeah, Fezandipity. Corbeau's outfit looks like Fezandipity, a Pokemon that uses the toxic chain to enhance its beauty, much like how Okidogi uses it to enhance its strength, and Munkidori for its wisdom and mind power. Interesting. There's another tweet, another speculation before we get into the solid stuff, and that is that Corbeau kind of looks a little bit like Kieran and Carmine, and his name in Japanese takes reference from the same order of flowers. The language of flowers is a huge thing in Pokemon. It's almost its own video, to be honest, that I should eventually do. But language is the most important part here. It is the tell. Like I say, it is there in writing. Now, this is going to reveal where the Syndicate is from, but then I want to tell you about what they're actually doing in the city, and of course, what's with the obsession with serpents. Pokemon's been dropping hints for a while. Okay, so what do I mean? It's in the language, it's there in writing. What am I talking about? Well, in the Pokemon world actually has its own language. There are hieroglyphs all across the Pokemon world, and in Galar and Paldea, we see a lot of the same text. In fact, we see these same symbols in Lumio City. There's a website that's trying to decipher a lot of this text, and there are some translations that you can make. But interestingly enough, all of those areas that I just mentioned are part of the sort of European Pokemon continent based on Spain and the UK and France. But when we look inside the Rust Syndicate headquarters, what do we see? A completely different set of symbols, a totally different set of hieroglyphs. What is this in connection to? Well, they do appear elsewhere in the Pokemon world, in two places. Hisui/Sinnoh and in Kitakami. What's more is those two areas of the Pokemon world are actually pretty well tied together. Kitakami has a bunch of Hisuian references, from the stone statues of Hisuian Growlithe to, in the Timeless Woods in the north of Kitakami, we can find White Stripe Basculin and even a Blood Moon Ursaluna that Perrin, the descendant of Adaman, has come down to investigate. It seems that based on the statues, the town in Kitakami, Misui Town, dates back to the era of Hisui and actually holds on to that culture a lot more strongly than the people of Sinnoh do. And I don't think using the colors of the Loyal 3, in particular Fezandipiti, is a coincidence here either. I actually think that is intentional, because to the people of Misui Town, these Pokemon are not villains. They're heroes. And again, this kind of takes that idea of the villains, the Rust Syndicate, actually being good guys with their own mission and their own goals. I know what their goals are, but before I get into that, what's the deal with serpents? And hopefully I've earned your trust enough here to, even if not to get your subscription just yet, to just go a little further afield to the Hoenn regions, the Battle Frontier and the Battle Pike, operated by Lucy, the Frontier Brain, who looks like she would fit into the Syndicate so perfectly. Maybe it's a retcon, maybe she does. And she uses serpent Pokemon, Gyarados, Steelix, Seviper of course, and Milotic. And this is where we begin to understand where Corbeau is from, how he is from Misui Town, because Misui Town has a very special connection to Milotic. You might remember playing through the Kitakami DLC and going up to the Crystal Pool. Now, the Crystal Pool is the water source for all of Misui Town, and that water is integral. The water trickles down from the Crystal Pool. It allows the people of Misui Town to cultivate the rice fields that ultimately they use to create the mochi that is the cultural identity of Kitakami. So it's pretty close to their hearts. In fact, it's very possible that this town can only exist because of the water source that flows down from the mountain. That's how a lot of towns work. And during the event of the DLC, you as an outsider are invited by Carmine to this sacred place where strange events are said to happen. People from the other side are said to be seen. And in protecting the pool, a Milotic appears to fight you both, a very angry Milotic. Feebas can be found only in the Crystal Pool in Kitakami and in a secret cave underneath the pool. And Feebas are an incredible Pokemon. They are Pokemon that survive even in the murkiest of waters, according to their Pokedex entries, before they evolve and become powerful and strong. Does that remind you of the Loyal Trio? Well, what if I said Milotic is a sort of... It's not a member of the Loyal Trio, obviously, but it is held in high regard by the people of Misui Town, and I know this because of my time playing it on the Switch 2, not on the Switch 1. Because on the Switch 1, the textures of Misui Town were not as easily readable, so I didn't notice that there are water veins all across Misui Town, and on each one depicted a Milotic. This Pokemon is important to the people of the town. Maybe the people, like Kieran and Carmine and their grandparents, who are related to a young boy in the town who grows up there called Corbeau. A boy who becomes fascinated by the story of the Loyal 3, who are enhanced by a little bit of toxicity, a little bit of corrosion inside themselves and become more powerful, strong, and wise. By the serpent Pokemon of the local area, Milotic, who is heralded by the local people. A Pokemon that first has to thrive in the dirt before it can become beautiful again. A boy who might be inspired by his grandparents or distant relatives who live in the town. I mean, it's a small town, everyone's probably related anyway. And they have a Weezing and an Arbok as the Pokemon that they use in the Mochi Mayhem DLC. Perhaps he was inspired by the general love of worms, and by worms I mean quite literally a worm. A serpent that is commonly found in Kitakami, getting in the other local delicacy, the syrupy apple. And perhaps it was there that he caught his first Pokemon, an Ekans, which you can find between Misui Town and the festival area. Studying the statues of ancient Hisui, he moved to Lumio City. But why? To Rust the metal of the city that he believes to be corrupt, to bring a little bit of nature back to it. Where did he get his money and resources? I don't know, probably from the Glitterati, who also live in the Kitakami area, but that would be speculative. But what's not speculative is what they are aiming to do. Ultimately, they are a syndicate in the dictionary definition. They are a group of people with a goal, and that goal is to bring order to the city in the way they best know how. Sometimes that might involve adding a little bit of toxicity into the mix, but it means that the city will become stronger, more powerful, and more beautiful, just like Serendipity. And so they do so with their Poison, Steel, and Serpent Pokemon, and the Serpent part is very important, because what happens if you bring order to Lumio City? Well, if you're lucky, you might just get an encounter with the most legendary serpent of them all. I think if you want more Pokemon lore videos like this, it's probably about time you hit the subscribe button if you haven't. See you all soon with a new video on Dragonite. Whether you're a new subscriber or one of our returning patrons and members, of which there are over 300 of you, I wanted to say thank you for the support. More lore breakdowns coming soon.